Hi, this is Shane Davis from Youngstown State University here with Figure It Out Baseball. Thanks for joining me for another book review, book recommendation, however you want to put it. Going back to the initial video that I did on Start With Why by Simon Sinek, my philosophy with these is to give guys recommendations with a little bit of a review, but give recommendations on books that maybe are a little bit outside of the typical stuff that you can find in a psychology section at Barnes and Noble or self-help. Getting away from the typical mental game type of stuff that people read, which are great, but if you read those all the time, eventually they'll get stale. So I'm looking to give people stuff outside of that realm. Not always baseball related, but a couple of them will be baseball related. The book I'd like to talk about today is Curveball by Barry Zito with Robert Noland. This book was, first off, a fairly quick read. I do read a lot, but I finished it in about 7 to 10 days. It's about 215 pages, and for me, it was one that I struggled to put down. Now, the best and worst part about this book for me is it's not really heavy on the X's and O's of baseball, meaning on the good side, you get to see more of what was going through his head, the lifestyle he was leading, ways that he tried to improve. On the bad side, you're not going to get a feel for how he threw his curveball. You're not going to get a feel for certain at-bats. He's not going to talk about, although he mentions it a little bit, he's not going to talk about being in the same locker room with Barry Bonds. It's very much a lifestyle type of book for him, with baseball obviously being a huge part of it. Without giving away too much of the book, his father from a young age wanted to kind of groom him, almost like a Marinovich type of deal, where they were working constantly and made baseball a huge part of his life, set lofty goals for him. He was kind of a little bit of a wild child, but always went back to baseball as a stabilizing force in his life. He is heavy on baseball at that point growing up, through college, and then his quick ascension to the major leagues. At that point, he kind of gets away from talking about really baseball type stuff, and it becomes more about life. Knowing his history, he was one of the better pitchers when I was in college and through, when I graduated college. So he's somebody that I grew up watching. Goes through his time with the A's when he wins a Cy Young, goes to a couple All-Star games, to the point where he signs a 7-year contract, record-breaking contract with the Giants, and then things start to spiral downhill for him. Talks a lot about how he dealt with that and how he started kind of playing for the wrong reasons. He was worried about what other people thought. He was worried about what his father thought, who at that point, and this is where this book has meaning for travel ball coaches, talks about how he would, after a bad outing, talk to his dad. He would always run things through his dad, where his dad, even while he was a major leaguer, was a little bit of a helicopter parent. Talks about that. Then he talks about he gets into more of his mental state, where he's battling with being married to baseball, but also on the other hand, trying to live the life of Vinny Chase from Entourage. He mentions in there he starts to search for answers to help himself as he was struggling through much of his Giants contract. He got into metaphysics. He got into Christian Science, which is where the type of religion that he grew up in. Yoga. He hired a mental coach that he will say in the book basically was a quack or con man. Just trying to search for answers to help him to get over that hump of worrying about what other people thought. And then the last 30 pages or so turns into him finding Christ. So it is a Christian book. I guess that would be one of the sections that it would be in, but it's not very heavy on Christ and Christ teaching, other than the last 30 to 50 pages or so, where he does find Christ as something that worked for him and helped him to kind of clear his head and find meaning in his life. What's really neat about this book is it seemed, reading it to me, like something that would have been that would be perfect for a setting for one of the Disney sports movies. Top of the world, top of the game, best pitcher in baseball, huge contract, and then the bottom crashes out to the point that in 2010 he was left off of their World Series and playoff roster. Only for 2 years later, towards the end of that contract, he was able to get redemption, and he was winning games in the playoff for him after he found this new outlook on life. And then, kind of has the storybook ending where he goes back to the Oakland A's. But, it's a really good book. It's an entertaining book. Again, you're not going to get a ton out of the X's and O's of baseball and approach to certain hitters. But reading this, you will get, going back to my Rick Ankiel book, you will get a sense for what goes through players' heads as they struggle. You will get a little bit of redemption story, and you will get a story about, finding meaning and purpose in life and what is important. And he doesn't hold any punches back about, his upbringing, his life, some of the trials and tribulations he had. It's a really good book, quick read, and I do recommend it. Thanks for joining me. Once again, this is Shane Davis with Youngstown State University here with Figure It Out Baseball.